Hi, I'm Shannon Simons, and I'm the author of Safe House. It is a fiction. It is completely fictional, but it is based on my experiences as an advocate, and it is inspired by the little town I live in and the beach that I live by. This is Seaside Beach, and it's one of the locations in the story, although it's not called that. This is chapter 13, Patterns. We've met Grace James. She's the advocate in the book who's in love with Hart but hasn't told him and he doesn't know. There's Kelly, who is a survivor, and her two children and her abuser. And then there is Emily and her daughter Amber. And Burke is sort of the bad guy, and he has gone for an attorney. So here we are with Kelly in the chapter called Patterns. Kelly had Hazel in her lap and Sam Jr. sitting next to her on the plush rug in the family room off her kitchen. Books were strewn around them on the floor as she read the book Sam Jr. had picked out. A shadow fell across them and she jumped. He is so quiet, she thought. Slowly, she looked up at her husband's angry face. Honey, you're home, Kelly said with a smile. Is this what you do when I'm working hard? I'm out sweating, working for you, and you're playing? Trying to get the focus off the kids, she stood and was roughly pushed by Sam. She snapped. What do you think I do all day, Sam? She asked as she headed away from the children to the bedroom. Well, let's just see. Striding past her and taking the bait, he said, let's see what you do all day. He yanked back their bedspread. What are these? He said without even looking at her. He knew he was talking about the way she tucked in the corners of the sheets. This was a ritual they had done before. Violently, he pulled off the bedspread, sheets and blankets, sweeping everything off her nightstand onto the floor. When he moved on to checking her drawers, Kelly turned from him to see Sam Jr. and Hazel watching wide-eyed. Slowly, she shut the bedroom door. And so now we go back to Burke. Tom Potter called the district attorney's office, hoping to arrange for Burke to turn himself in and pay bail so he could be released. If he was released, he would get a later date for an arraignment, and that would give the victim time to recant. Bill Masterson, the district attorney, was a serious, older man that wore an old hat, cowboy boots, and a bow tie. Look, Tom, Bill said on the phone, I plan to take this case to grand jury as soon as possible. You know the felony law. The kid's a witness, and it's a felony. Tom shot back. This is a family that's lived here forever. He's not going anywhere. He's committed to stay with his parents, go on electronic monitoring, and pay bail. Have you met Ed? Ed is a great guy. I don't care who his father is. If he screws up and contacts my victim or witnesses, I'm going to ask for no bail and no release, Bill spit into the phone. I'll have to talk it over with him. I promise. I think we can get this resolved. And then over to the jail. Burke sat on the bench in the jail booking room, waiting his turn, looking at the brick walls. They were just like the walls in juvenile detention. He'd been in juvenile as a teenager for short stays over fights he'd had in drunken brawls outside of local bars he wasn't supposed to be drinking in. Strutting, he'd gone into juvenile cocky and had been well rewarded. When his father bought his way out, he was placed in a cushy drug and alcohol treatment facility in the mountains of Idaho. It was like an extended stay at camp. He was positive he wasn't an alcoholic or drug addict. It was just anger. It wasn't his fault. He couldn't help himself. He was always sure his father would find a way out. The rules still did not apply to him. They photographed and fingerprinted him, and now they were putting an electronic bracelet on his ankle. It was supposed to track him. He was sure there was a way around it, and he intended to find it. Mr. Anderson, the deputy said, interrupting his thoughts, do you understand your release agreement? Without waiting for Burke's answer, he continued to read from the paper in front of him. You may not have contact, first or third party, with Emily Anderson, your victim. The deputy looked at him, and Burke realized he was supposed to agree. Sure. Burke leaned back in the chair and folded his arms. Do you realize and understand that you are not to be within 500 feet of your previous residence? Yeah. Do you understand you cannot contact any witness listed on your case, including Amber Anderson, or you will be in violation of your release agreement? Hey, wait a minute, she's my stepkid. The deputy ignored Burke and continued to read in his monotone voice. If you violate this release agreement, you will be returned to jail, possibly for the duration of the time until your trial. How long is that usually? It varies case by case, but if you violate this release agreement, you will forfeit any money paid on bail and you will owe the remainder of your bail. Burke thought whatever bail there was, his dad would be able to pay again or find another way out. Not long afterwards, Burke walked out of jail, a free man with a new ankle bracelet. His father drove him to his parents' home on the mountain where his mother Anna was barbecuing his favorite cut of steak. Dad, which car can I borrow? Take the old truck. Take the old pickup. Thanks. So, in the first of the chapter, we watched Kelly. And yeah, things were happening in front of the kids. But if you'll notice, Kelly was doing what a lot of survivors do. She was working really hard to protect her children. So as soon as Burke was home and was angry, she baited him to get him out of the family room and into the bedroom. And once she got into the bedroom, she could shut the door. She knew his patterns. She knew how he controlled her. And honestly, it may not seem like it, but as a survivor, she was doing the best she could in the moment. Yeah, we want her to leave. We want her to be safe. But recognize and understand that your daughters, your loved ones, and your friends or your parishioners, like she may be appearing angry when she baits him, but that's her way of getting the attention on her and taking it off of the children. And for Burke, as you can see, he's not very repentant. He's lived a life of privilege. Privilege sometimes can harm us. I think sometimes as parents, you know, we love our kids and we really want to do the right thing, and we have a son who's drinking alcohol or doing drugs, and we don't want to think that my kid really has a problem. And so we do things like whisk them away to inpatient drug and alcohol treatment rather than have them face the consequences of their actions. And that is very fair. The law allows for that. It allows for us to negotiate, and sometimes that works really well. But in other cases, as parents, we have to be really careful that we're not giving the message that the rules don't apply to you and that it's always somebody else's fault. You know, listen to the way that people talk around their children or you talk around your children. Learn to own your own stuff in front of your children and let them watch you struggle through making amends and apologizing and doing the right thing, and you will be teaching them accountability through your example. And then in the small stuff happens when they're really little and little things happen. Give them the opportunity to make amends, you know, when they hit a brother or sister over a toy, to go back, make amends, to own their part. It's pretty deeply ingrained. There's a really great author, Lundy Bancroft, who's written a book, Why Does He Do That? In the Mind of Angry, looking into the mind of angry and controlling men. Not sure if that's exactly, but it's Lundy Bancroft, Lundybancroft. And you can find an excerpt from her work and some really great lists. I love to go to the National Coalition and your state coalitions. This came from thehotline.org, or you can find it in her book. But she says, signs an abuser is changing. So you're married to somebody and you wonder, will he change? Can we fix this? Or you're a pastor or working with somebody. The first sign is to admit fully to what you've done. And that is without the but. I did it, but. I did it, but it was your fault. Or blame shifting. It's owning your stuff. It's very similar to other kind of addictive patterns where you're doing something over and over again because it's somebody else's fault. Stop excusing and blame shifting. Make amends. Accept responsibility and recognize abuse is a choice. So a lot of times abusers and we say that our kids or that people are out of control. So here's how you know if somebody's truly mentally ill, unable, or out of control. If somebody's truly mentally unable to control themselves, then they're going to be brawling in the grocery store, they're going to be brawling at the gas station, they're going to be brawling with the pastor, they're going to be brawling with their teacher, they're going to be treating everybody that way, or random people that way, not just their spouse behind closed doors. If they can have a really bad day at work and not scream at their boss and wait all the way until they get home to shut the door and abuse their family, then they are not out of control. They have made the choice to wait. the abuser should be able to identify the attitudes that led to their abuse, that kind of self-talk that they use to excuse it, and to accept the consequences of their actions. And she goes on and gives you many more things, but she says it's a decade-long process, that you are never cured. It reminds me very much of the process of resolving addiction. Abuse works for the abuser. It gets them what they want, and it is definitely a choice. So next time, the next chapter is called Choices.